Hi, I'm Dr. Walter Matwichuk, and I'm here to discuss with you the latest revision in my REBT self-help worksheet. Now, the first thing I like to mention is that people generally don't like to do a worksheet. They think they can do the self-therapy that REBT suggests in their head, which is possible, but generally speaking, it's not possible when you first start using REBT. That's why a worksheet can be very useful. Now, I've been trying to tweak it over the years, making it most helpful, and therefore, I'd like to take you through a couple of parts of it. It can be found attached to this email, and for those of you who are viewing this on YouTube, you can click on the link found in the description of today's video and go to my website and grab this new version of the worksheet. First of all, it begins with what's called a brief description of the adversity, and this has been in the original model, but what I'm trying to do in this worksheet, in this upgrade, is really emphasize the critical A. The critical inference is the part of the adversity that people are having an emotional reaction to. And so we sometimes ask the question, what's the distressing element of the adversity you face? What aspect of the adversity are you reacting to? And that's a very important question to isolate. One can describe that they're having a problem with their boyfriend, but there is likely an element of that problem that, if specified, will help a person identify the basic attitude they're using to disturb themselves more effectively. And that's why we want to identify what's called the critical inference. The next part of the worksheet, which I'd like to draw your attention to, is that I offer in section B the 3 core rigid attitudes. They're specified right there. These are: I must do well or possess certain highly desirable characteristics. You must treat me as I wish. Life absolutely should be as I want it to be. These 3 are theoretically at the core of emotional disturbance, and that's the REBT model. Now, what people have trouble doing is giving voice to their particular irrational attitude, their rigid attitude. And by looking at these 3 examples of what might be considered rigid attitudes, you could try to use them as examples to give voice to your particular rigid attitude. So, for example, the way I specified the second attitude that people often anger themselves with is, you must treat me as I wish. Well, if you looked at that attitude, you might use it as a prompt, and you might then say, well, my attitude is people have to treat me fairly. Like my sons or my daughters, my kids, they have to treat me fairly. So it's not so much that you're demanding or insisting that they treat you as you wish. It's a better fitting attitude for you is to put it as, they must treat me as I deserve, they must treat me with respect. So what I'm thinking is that by having these on the worksheet, you could look at these and then try to tweak it so your irrational attitude, your rigid attitude, is better specified. And you can do that by taking into account the distressing element of the adversity you face. So, for example, if a person is having some sort of problem with their kids, and they just briefly write, my kids are not speaking to me, the critical element could be put as, they're shunning me, or they're treating me disrespectfully. That would be the critical A. And then the basic attitude would be, well, not so much that they should treat me as I wish. That's not the best way to put it. The better way to put it is, they absolutely should treat me with respect. And that's why the critical A is important, because it helps you bring into focus or give voice in a way that resonates with you the rigid attitude that you're holding, because in REBT we want people really to precisely specify an attitude that they're using to disturb themselves. And the reason we want them to be so specific in doing that is because we believe that that's going to help them engage with their emotion. This whole exercise itself, therapy, is useless unless there's some real emotional engagement that occurs. We don't want it just to be an intellectual exercise. Now, going further down the worksheet, you can see I've specified the 3 derivatives of REBT. So this worksheet is really a nice theoretical refresher course for you, but it also will help you go down and remember the theory. REBT says people will hold rigid attitudes to disturb themselves, and then they'll have 3 possible derivatives. They may not have any of them, or they may just have one of them. So what you can see here is I specify the 3 derivatives. One is overrating how bad something is, and generally we say something like, it's awful, it's terrible, it's the end of the world. Alternatively, some people will find that what follows from their rigid attitude is a derivative attitude of unbearability, intolerance. I can't stand it. It's too hard. This is a different kind of attitude. It's really a statement of intolerance of either our feelings that we experience when we're facing a particular adversity, or it's a statement about a particular adversity we can't tolerate. So using the example that I specified earlier is, well, my kids must treat me as I deserve with respect. The derivative a person could have that would lead to hurt is, I can't stand it when they treat me this way. Or it could be, it's awful that they're not treating me with respect. It could be both, it could be either or neither. But by having them here, you can look at these and say, oh, do either of these seem to fit my emotional reaction? The third derivative that REBT theorizes is possible is what we call overgeneralization and devaluation, where people will say something like, well, I'm bad, or you're bad, or life is completely bad. And all of these are overgeneralized statements. And REBT is always encouraging people to be more precise and specify a bad part while not devaluing or condemning the whole person. So again, the person who says, well, my kids absolutely should be treating me with respect, which they're not, and not only is it awful, but they're doing more than acting like bad people towards me, acting in a bad way towards me. They are bad, meaning at least for the moment when I'm angry with them, I'm condemning them in my head. Now, not a lot of parents will want to fess up to that, but I'm telling you, anger often involves a condemning element. Now, what people will do is they'll say, when you're acting this way and I'm angry, in my head, you're a bad person. Now, when they cool down, they'll go, oh, no, they're not a bad person, they've acted badly. But that's just the point. This worksheet is trying to help you see how you're disturbing yourself and to identify the specific attitudes you're holding, both the rigid and the extreme attitude. So this worksheet could be helpful, just jogging your memory that, hey, when a kid or a relative acts badly, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, but certainly they're doing something you really don't like. And that will, in and of itself, will help you once you realize that. Going further down the list, you'll see I have a place that says consequences, followed by the question, what are my self-defeating emotions and behaviors? What healthy negative feeling is better? And what we're doing in REBT is trying to get people to specify their unhealthy, self-defeating feeling and learn how, by doing self-therapy, to transform that feeling into a healthy one. Very often people will start the worksheet at point C. They're aware that they're upset, so you could start there and then go back to A and specify the adversity and the critical inference at A, the critical A. So it doesn't matter whether you begin the worksheet at A or at C. What does matter is that you get both of those down, because that's going to help you identify your rigid and extreme attitudes at point B. Moving down the list, you'll see that I then talk about in the worksheet the disputing process. And that's aimed at transforming your rigid attitude into a flexible and non-extreme one. So I have 4 prompts there: pragmatic question, empirical question, teach a child question, logical question. Now, you don't have to use all 4 of them, especially the logical one, because that can be pretty hard to learn. But the point is, you want to use at least 1, maybe 2, because you really want to think about these questions in order to loosen your grip on your rigid and extreme attitude. So a pragmatic question would be something like, well, holding the attitude that my children must not treat me disrespectfully, is that a practical or pragmatic thing to hold, an attitude to hold? No. Why isn't it? Oh, because kids are sometimes going to treat their parents with disrespect. So it's not very practical. It only ends up leading me to feel angry or hurt, which only makes it more difficult for me to model for them a healthy reaction. Somebody in the relationship needs to have a healthy reaction. In my view, it'd be better if it's the person doing this for them. The second, an empirical question might be, well, show me the evidence that kids have to treat you as respectfully as you'd like, or respectfully at all. Well, there's lots of evidence that we can prove or show that supports the idea that they don't have to treat you respectfully. Children often treat their parents disrespectfully. So the evidence shows 2 things. 1, the evidence shows that you want respect, and 2, the evidence shows that, sadly, children don't have to give you what you want. A teach a child question is where you step back and assume you're instructing a child. So let's assume your adult child comes to you and says, you know what, Mom or Dad, my kid, I'm so angry at my kid because sometimes it seems as if they're just not treating me with respect. This question, as they must, this question, teach a child question, aims to get you to think about, well, what would you say to your kid? Like, would you stoke the flames of their hurt and anger by saying, yeah, your kid should do that, they absolutely should? Or might you say something like, well, you know, can I be honest with you? Sometimes when you were growing up, you weren't always respectful to me, so what does that show? And what I'm trying to teach you is the idea that, yeah, we all want respect from our children, but sadly, they don't have to do that. So I certainly would not teach this imaginary child to think that they should get respect from their children. Absolutely should. I would teach them that it's fine to want that, and it's certainly fair to want that. But sadly, in this world, people are not compelled to treat their parents with respect. And so you would want to teach your adult child to have a healthy attitude, which is, I want my kid to respect me, but sadly they don't have to. And thereby, this question would help you do that cognitive shift by thinking about what you would say to your adult child or a young child, depending upon the circumstances of this worksheet, what you would say to them to help them. Would you teach them the attitude you're holding, that your kids absolutely must treat you with respect and that it's awful when they don't? I don't think you would teach that to your adult child. I hope you wouldn't. I think it would be far better if you taught your adult child, look, I get why you'd want your children to treat you with respect. And I get how you'll be disappointed. But insisting is only going to anger you. And I doubt that's going to help you better manage them and maybe even respond to them in a healthy way so that down the road you get more respect from them. Now, the final part of the worksheet, titled E, Effective New Flexible Non-Extreme Attitude and Behavior Towards This Adversity, has two questions, and both of them are important. The first one is, what flexible and non-extreme attitude would bring out a healthy negative emotion in me as I face this adversity? This is the ultimate goal of REBT. It's to do self-therapy when you're upset or engaging in self-defeating behavior so that you change how you think about whatever it is that you're facing, whatever adversity you're facing. And by asking yourself what flexible and non-extreme attitude will bring out a healthy negative emotion in me, you're reminding yourself that your goal is to seek an attitude that's going to take you to a healthy negative emotion. That healthy negative emotion, that healthy negative attitude is going to be specified, said in a preference. You know, I want my kids to treat me with respect, but sadly they don't have to do so. I want them to, but sadly they don't have to do so. I'm going to try to get them to give me respect, and certainly when they show me disrespect, I'm going to be sad about that. I'm not going to pout. I'm not going to sulk. I'm going to assert myself. It's bad to face disrespect, but it's certainly not the end of the world. And if I think of it as the end of the world, then I'm only going to escalate the conflict with my kids. Then the last question under E is, the second question is, well, what would be the healthy behavior I would do if I deeply held my new flexible non-extreme attitude? Well, the healthy behavior might be, when everybody cools down, ask if you could speak to them and assert yourself. Like, I'd like to talk to you about how you sometimes treat me. As I see it, you sometimes treat me badly with disrespect. And I would like to ask you to not do that. Now, that may open up a dialogue that's constructive or not. Sadly, when we assert ourselves with other people, it doesn't compel them to treat us nicely. That's the difficulty of living in this world, that we can treat people nicely, we can ask them to do so, but they're not compelled by any natural law. It's not a law of physics for people to treat us as we treat them. And so this question is going to prompt you for the healthy behavior. The healthy behavior might be to model for them tolerance, model for them assertiveness, but not model for them. You might even put under here modeling a healthy negative emotion, because in a way that's a behavior too. By modeling a healthy negative emotion, what you're really doing is teaching them REBT, teaching them emotional responsibility, rather than flying off the handle and acting like a 2-year-old, rather than pouting or sulking because you're not getting treated with respect. You could model a healthy point of view and a healthy attitude, a healthy behavior. So I think this worksheet is really worth doing, and I know that people don't like doing them. I would say try to do them. It's a little bit like fixing a tire when you're driving. If you get a flat tire and you drive anyway, even though it's flat, you're probably not going to do so well with having a healthy car. And you can avoid doing self-therapy, but it's probably not in your best interest. What would be good when you have a flat tire is pull the car over, change the tire. Well, this is a little bit like changing the emotional tire when you're upset, when you're engaging in self-defeating behavior. So I would encourage you to experiment with it. I know that you probably don't like doing it. That's okay. You don't have to like it. But it is a good exercise, and I would encourage you to try to do one every now and then when you're upset. And you'll see, by putting pen to paper and using my REBT doctor.com worksheet, you too can do self-therapy when you're angering yourself, when you're depressing yourself, when you're making yourself feel shameful, and thereby respond more effectively in a healthy way to the adversity you face. One last thing. Every Saturday, I do a demonstration of this REBT process. So you can actually watch the demonstration while looking at this worksheet. So you can actually learn to use the worksheet and follow the process that I try to do with a volunteer. What happens is on Saturday at 9 a.m., I do this free demonstration where one person is selected to discuss a real problem, and I then bring them through this process. And by 160 people watching in the background, what happens is they too learn. This is a really good form of free public emotional education. And I would encourage you, wherever you are in the world, to take the time to watch it, because I know that by watching it every week, you too will learn. It gives you a top-down view, so to speak, the view from above in this process. It's at 9 a.m. here in New York, which is where I am, which is 2 p.m. in the UK. It's now summertime, so it's 2 p.m. in the UK. I think that's 6:30 in India, or in that part of the world. It's 10 p.m. in Japan. You can go and figure out what time it exactly is. It's 9 a.m. in New York, so you could ask Google what time 9 a.m. is in your neck of the woods. It's free to attend. It's on Zoom. You need the link. You can write to me at rebtdoctor, DOCTOR, @gmail.com. And I think it'll be worth your time. Over and out from New York.